I'm Larry Ray, President and CEO of American Manganese, Inc., listed on the TSX Venture, ticker symbol AMY, A-M-Y, with proprietary patents in the U.S., China, and South Africa. Our focus is on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. China recently legislated the responsibility for recycling onto their electric vehicle manufacturers and importers. For more information, please visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Rick Ackerman, editor of the newsletter Rick's Picks. His website, rickackerman.com. He's speaking to us from Colorado. Welcome back to the show, Rick.
Thanks for inviting me on, Jim. Always a pleasure.
The housing market, now, is it doing great? Or are we being told it's doing great, but it's not?
Well, it appears to be doing great. It's only because the supply is so tight. You know, I was just talking with a friend in Vancouver, and he says there are not many transactions happening, but price is certainly holding up. And that's really just a function of a relatively large number of buyers chasing a relatively small number of homes. And that's particularly the case where I live. I've got a home of my own that I've lived in for 19 years for sale, and I'll be moving east. And I've been intimately involved from, I would say, day to day, but it's more like hour to hour, in the whimsicality, the vicissitudes of the local real estate market. You know, Memorial Day came and things went kind of dead. I've been listed for 5 weeks, and my realtor said, well, don't worry, it always slows down around Memorial Day. So it picked up for about 4 days, and then slowed down again, and she said, well, there's always a lull at this time. So these lulls are almost like it's the strain of flu is, quote-unquote, going around. You know, they really don't know. But I do know, at least to the extent that I've been out there in the listings for 5 weeks and no buyers. And my realtor said initially, don't put a dime into the house. The market's so strong that you shouldn't put money into improvements. But since then, since I've been showing the house, I've thrown about $15K into it with a total exterior and interior paint job and all new carpeting. And of course, I would tell all your listeners that they should do those improvements when they move in, not when they move out, because it's just nice to enjoy them. But be that as it may, you know, I've been sort of seeing the market fluctuate and in very subtle ways. And there has been, though, a general softening of prices in this very, very hot market in Boulder. And, you know, it's anybody's guess as to why that softening is occurring. But one of the things I do for a living is guess about such things, particularly in the stock market. And my darkest fear, dark because I am out there on the market trying to sell a house, is that John Q. Public is really sniffing out the reality of the economy, which is that it's coasting on fumes. And, you know, I think there's a lot of skepticism out there in the heartland about all this ebullience on Wall Street with the, you know, the broad averages always near new record highs. So, I'm hoping that this little bit of softness in Boulder real estate is not a leading indicator for what's going to happen in the stock market, because once these all things start acting on each other and acting in concert, it's going to be quite a cascade.
Now, of course, we have the crisis in retail where Amazon's getting everything online and brick-and-mortar stores like Sears are just taking a pounding.
Yeah, and it's amazing to me. You know, Amazon is such a great example of creative destruction. And as much as it's destroying, I guess, is all going to the benefit of Amazon shares. I have a 1083 target. Stock's currently 980-something. And it'll either get there or it won't, but I'm using Amazon as a key bellwether. It winds up paradoxically being a brick-and-mortar company that's putting all the brick-and-mortar in this world out of business. I say Amazon is very bricks and mortar simply because when they expand, they're building warehouses, they're investing in transportation infrastructure, and in the kind of Austrian economist sense of the word, they are a true creator of wealth. I wouldn't say that of Uber or even Google and Facebook. You know, to me, Google and Facebook are just big advertising agencies, and Uber is just a bag of hot air, especially at a peak valuation of around, I think it was $68 billion. So all of this is going to deflate, I think, particularly in the San Francisco real estate market, which, as you may have read, is softening itself. And when you get rents and home prices coming down in the Bay Area, you better pay attention.
They're driven by high tech in San Francisco, but is that booming enough to really sustain those super high prices?
Not at all. You know, I was back there not too long ago and discovered that you can buy a hamburger for $68 on Valencia Street. Valencia used to be kind of the heart of the Mission, along with Mission Street, but it is definitely gentrified way up the ladder. And, of course, it's done so really with the paychecks of all these Google workers and not Uber, but, you know, all the tech companies that are there in the Silicon Valley and Mountain View, Palo Alto, San Francisco, and the Bay Area. So they're all sort of renting with these inflated salaries. You get in a bidding war for a studio apartment in the Mission, which was that wasn't San Francisco's best neighborhood, but you'll pay $2,500 for a not great apartment. So San Francisco is enormously pumped up, ostensibly because the stocks that these young workers hold shares in is just as pumped.
We'll have more with Rick Ackerman right after the break.
Gem International is a new diamond explorer in the richest diamond producing country in Africa, located next to the fourth largest producing diamond mine in the world. International Spotlight is on an 1109 carat diamond recently discovered in Africa by a fellow Canadian junior with a proven operator and finance team. Gem International trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol GI. Visit us at gemdiamondmining.com.
Lotus Ventures Inc. is a BC-based medical marijuana company poised to launch into the rapidly evolving cannabis sector. Lotus is in the final review stage of the Health Canada approvals to become a licensed producer, having arranged facility financing of up to $12 million, plus building permits for its prototype indoor production facility. Shares trade under the symbol J on the Canadian Securities Exchange. Visit our website at lotusventures.ca.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Rick Ackerman. Rick, a study just found that energy investments are down for a second year in a row. Are we going to see a bounce back in oil anytime soon?
Oil is going to be the big deflator when we have a deflationary implosion, simply because in the wake of the housing collapse of 2007-8, the guys who make their living throwing other people's money at whatever threw it in energy. So a good deal of the loans held by banks are collateralized by energy resources. And, of course, it's been a difficult job trying to talk up that market. It's gigantic. And when you have the biggest energy consumer at the margin, China, not in a state, a booming economy, that impacts the oil market. And, of course, we've got, the U.S. energy producers. They are going great guns, particularly in fracking, even though they know that there's plenty of supply in the pipeline. So all of these things are going to bring oil down, and I think that the only reason we're seeing occasional rallies in crude is because the correct bet is short. You know, you have to be bearish on crude oil prices, and because everybody knows that, the market itself has a way of adjusting so as not to make it too easy for all those people who are doing the right thing to make lots of money. My own forecast for oil calls for prices sub 30, and that's where I think we're going. But when I get things in my own email from people who think it's going to 10, I don't really think of them as crazy.
Well, at that price, who's going to bother producing it?
Well, you'd be surprised. You know, the frackers are very nimble, and they can be. We're exporting oil now, the U.S., and oil is fungible in global markets, so there's always going to be someone to sell to, but probably less of it over time. So I think we'll see enough oil production in any case to keep glut conditions there, and it will continue to weigh on the price of crude.
ISIS was a factor in oil prices as well, I would think, because they were discounting oil and sneaking it in through Turkey. Now that that's more or less stopped, that probably has helped stabilize prices a bit, hasn't it?
Right. ISIS wound up being just one more source of supply. It was their biggest source of revenues, and so in that sense, whatever the Saudis agreed with, who knows, the Russians, the Venezuelans, the Iranians, you had ISIS there to make sure there was always plenty of supply. So it just shows you that no pact between cartel producers will ever succeed.
Is Venezuela the perfect example of what happens when you socialize everything and have no real value in your economy?
Well, they've got such a huge supply of of a light grade oil that requires less refining, and you'd think they'd be swimming in money, but in fact, you have to have your relatives send toilet paper, just medical supplies. Everything's in short supply in Venezuela. And while this may look like paradise to Sean Penn, no one else is fooled really. It's just a terrible place, and I guess a perfect instance of what happens when people trust Marxists.
We'll have more with Rick Ackerman right after this.
I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Rainy Mountain Royalty Corp., RMO on the TSX Venture Exchange. Rainy Mountain's Brunswick property is located in the Rideout Shear Zone in Ontario. With grab samples running as high as 32 grams per ton gold, a drill program will commence this spring to test the numerous targets located by recent groundwork. For more information, visit our website, rmroyalty.com.
Keep informed. Receive our weekly recap of thought-provoking articles, podcasts, and radio delivered to your inbox for free. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage, HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're chatting with Rick Ackerman. Rick, the Fed making more noises about upping interest rates. The Bank of Canada expected to up interest rates on Wednesday. Is this a good move, or is this something that they feel they have to do no matter what?
Nothing the Fed has ever done has been a good move. Since whenever it was, 1913 or so, all they've been doing is blundering. And I think the world has sort of caught on to this game about, talking tightening, but not doing much of it. And that's the case, they can occasionally hope that a 25 basis point increase in administered rates won't unsettle the market too much. But the U.S. economy and the global economy are certainly fragile enough that just a small turn of the screw could really bring the whole thing down. So the Fed would like to think that everybody believes that they've got room to go up another 100, 200 basis points, as we know, simply to have a little bit of room to loosen when this recession that the U.S. is going to be in at the end of this year starts to hit full bore and statistically. So, I think something we've talked about this a lot of times, but the best way to understand the Fed and the economy is to realize that there's never going to be inflation. We've got a deflationary juggernaut in the form of, for one, a quadrillion-dollar derivatives market. It's ready to implode, and even though, we're no longer seeing inflation in groceries and things like that because Walmart and Amazon are now beating each other's brains in, to sell, to undercut each other on what to begin with were only 1 or 2% margins on everything they sell. So, you can just sort of you can't tune out the Fed. They're always going to have their impact just by saying stuff, but I think fewer people are believing what the Fed says, or that the U.S. economy is by any stretch capable of absorbing significant tightening.
A survey found 27% of Canadian mortgage holders feel they're in over their head. Could this see panic selling on the real estate market?
Well, that's interesting. You know, if they're reporting 27%, I would say you should just double it and say that 54% are actually underwater, or they have reason to fear. And I guess Canadian residential real estate is more pumped on the West Coast. That's where the danger zone is. But there's probably nowhere on earth any longer, even Bora Bora, where you can buy a cheap house. So it's a global phenomenon, and Canada is not the worst of it.
Rick, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Well, thank you, Jim. It's always a pleasure.
My guest has been Rick Ackerman, editor of Rick's Picks, his website, rickackerman.com. You're listening to HowStreet.com Radio. Find us on Twitter at TalkDigitalNet. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Questions for the show can be sent to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com Radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com Radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.